During this time of Easter, during this Easter season, one of the things that we ponder on a lot is the reality of the resurrection, right? It's what Easter is. That Jesus truly died, 100% dead, and he came back to life, right? With his same body to die no more. He beat death. Right? Death has no more power over him. He is truly risen. He is alive, in fact. And this is kind of what our gospel is alluding to today, right? Jesus appears to his disciples, and they're kind of freaking out because they're seeing this guy that they thought was dead. They think they're seeing a ghost. And so he says to them, "Why are you troubled? And why do questions arise in your hearts? Look at my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Touch me and see, because a ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you can see I have." And as he said this, he showed them his hands and his feet, right? The disciples are just so shocked and seeing him again. They think it's a ghost, like there's no way this is actually Jesus. But Jesus is having to tell him, like, hey, no, it's really me. Like, look at my hands. It's my same body that was crucified 3 days ago. Look at the wounds on my hands. Look at my feet. Touch me. Like, I'm flesh and bone. And then he actually asked them for food. So as to further prove, like, he starts eating some fish in front of them. Like, I can eat. I have a real body. Truly, it's really me, right? So at first, it's a little bit hard for the apostles, even though they're seeing him, to believe that it's really him. But after a little bit, yes, they can touch him. They see him eat. Okay, it is really you, Lord. It's not just an appearance of you. And so they come to believe in this, the resurrection. And so as they become convicted of this, they begin to preach, to become witnesses to the resurrection. This truth of the resurrection, that it is a historical fact, is such a core of what it means to be a Christian. Are we convinced of the historicity of the resurrection? That it is not just a nice tale, but actually a fact indeed. If Jesus did not rise from the dead, then Christianity is just a farce, right? And we should close our churches and just call it quits. Be coherent. But if Jesus did rise from the dead, and he did, then Christianity is the only true faith. The only true religion, proved by the very fact of the resurrection. That God indeed became man, and he was indeed God, and shown by the fact that he was able to conquer death, that he came back from the dead after being beat and killed. And so, if this is indeed true, and it is, again, then we should give our whole lives to the Lord. We should believe, be convinced of the fact of the resurrection, become witnesses to it, and then give our whole lives to Christ. Now, this brings me to the second reading from the letter of St. John. So St. John is addressing the early Christians. He's talking to them, and he is, talking to them about the fact that, belief in Christ is crucial, and his resurrection is important. It's the core, it's where it all begins. But it cannot end there. Belief in Jesus is not enough. It's necessary 100%, and it's crucial, and it's where it all begins. But just mere belief in Jesus is not enough. Our behavior, the way we live our lives, actually has to change as well. And so this is what John says. The way we may be sure that we know him is to keep his commandments. Those who say, I know him, but do not keep his commandments are liars, and the truth is not in them. But whoever keeps his word, that is his commandments, the love of God is truly perfected in him. All right, it's just so clear. Belief in Jesus is not enough. It is not enough to just to believe in him. We have to love him. And loving him is not this ambiguous kind of thing. Oh, yeah, I kind of love him in my heart, sort of. Right? It's concrete, right? It's in that commandments. That way we make sure that we know him is to keep his commandments. Whoever keeps his word, that is his commandments, the love of God is truly perfected in him. So that perfection of love for God and neighbor is found in the commandments, right? And that's the core of what it means to be a Christian. Belief, but also behavior, right? Keeping the commandments. Now, the other day, just a few weeks ago, I was teaching a class here at the parish for about 20 to 30 adults, and the topic was about confession, all this stuff. Anyway, I ended up speaking about the commandments. And so, of course, I pulled out a whiteboard because whiteboards are awesome. For some reason, we should have them everywhere. And I know you agree with me. Anyway, so I have the whiteboard there, and I put numbers 1 to 10, just right there. And then, I kind of told the class, all right, help me fill it up, right? What are the 10 commandments? And I just got crickets. We didn't know the 10 commandments. And, well, they were in class, so maybe they were there to learn them, but there's a lot of people that were there, had grown up as Christians and Catholics. In fact, maybe we have some people here that were at the class. I know that happened in the previous masses. But we struggled to fill them up. I was surprised that we struggled. Do we know the 10 commandments? Do you know the 10 commandments by heart? If I ask you just right now, can you just start listing them? Or you'd be like, oh yeah, I think I can come up with them if I really think about it, right? If I ask you a specific commandment, what's the 7th commandment? Can you just boom, this is it, right? At the 5 p.m. mass yesterday, talking about this, I was like, do you know the 7th commandment? And somebody yelled out an answer. It's actually wrong. And I was like, thank you, yes. I paid the person before. Yes. The way we may be sure that we know him is to keep his commandments, says St. John. But how can we keep the commandments if we do not know them? We have to know the 10 commandments by heart. And I'm sure, even if you don't know them by memory, the 10 commandments, that you kind of know what they contain and you have a sense of what's right and what's wrong because of your conscience and maybe growing up in the church or having converted into the church. So it's good. I'm sure you know some of what it means to love the Lord and what the commandments entail, but we should know the 10 commandments. This is Christianity 101. As basic, as bare bones thing as it gets, right? We should know the 10 commandments. And so, if you do not know the 10 commandments, well, homework for you, all right? Learn the 10 commandments in the next couple of weeks. Just print them off online, right? You can search the Catholic 10 commandments because there's some discrepancy in some lists. Print them off and put them on, whatever, your bathroom mirror or something. And while you brush your teeth, you study the 10 commandments, and in 2 weeks, you'll have them. And when I quiz you, you'll be able to, boom, all right? Say the commandment and get it right, all right? Now, besides knowing just the 10 commandments, it's not just about regurgitating information. We should also understand what they entail, right? If I can just list the 10 commandments, but I don't know what they mean, then how can I keep them too, right? First, I have to know them if I'm going to keep them, and then I have to understand them as well if I am to keep them. And the commandments actually are very deep, and they include much more than just the actual just phrase. For example, when you talk about the 7th commandment, which is thou shalt not steal, you could say, oh, well, it's really easy to explain it, right? If a non-Christian were to tell me, hey, well, what do y'all believe? What's love in the Christian sense? You tell, the 10 commandments, and you explain them, and you say, well, thou shalt not steal. Well, it means don't take things that don't belong to you. Okay, yes, that is kind of the superficial part of the thou shalt not steal, and very important, probably the most important part. But it's actually much more to that commandment than that, regarding how we use our goods. So a place where you could dive deeper into understanding the 10 commandments and their whole depths and how they are the perfection of love is in the Catechism of the Catholic Church. If you've never heard of this book, it's kind of the summary of everything Catholic, and it's 4 sections. The first section is the Creed, what we say after the homily. It explains the whole Creed. The second section, the 7 sacraments, explains the 7 sacraments. Third section, the 10 commandments, and it goes through each commandment and explains it. Fourth section is about prayer. So if you were to open your catechism to the section, the 7th commandment, thou shalt not steal, you'll read a lot of really good stuff there. Let me just read you one paragraph to give you a sense of how there's more depth to the commandment. It says, in his use of things, man should regard the external goods that he legitimately owns, not merely as exclusive to himself, but common to others also, in the sense that they can benefit others as well as himself. The ownership of any property makes his holder a steward of providence, with the task of making it fruitful and communicating its benefits to others. First of all, his family. It's basically saying that yes, we can legitimately own goods, but when we own something, in a sense, it also kind of belongs to others, especially our family. So there's a sense of having to share. And if I have an abundance of goods, then I have a great responsibility of sharing. And insofar as I don't share my goods, I'm kind of stealing from others, especially those who are in need, who are not as blessed as I am materially speaking, right? Or an extra car sitting around, and one of my family members, their car broke down. I'm like, oh man, that sucks. Yeah. Yeah. Or I'm just holding so tightly to my car, like, no, what if it gets scratched? Well, I'm blessed with an extra car, right? If it gets scratched, it's going to be okay, right? And I'm going to land that car. And that's part of the seventh commandment, right? Even though I'm not, quote unquote, technically taking something from somebody that doesn't belong to them in the strict sense of the word, in some sense, that car also belongs to others, right? Insofar as it's a surplus of what God has blessed me with, right? If we do not know the Ten Commandments, we can't keep them. If we don't know what they contain, we can't keep them either. So we have to first memorize them. This is the first homework. Second is we could dive deeper into learning the Ten Commandments. And so how may you be able to dive deeper into the Ten Commandments? First way is you can buy, or this is free online as well, and just read on the Ten Commandments. Though it's a little bit dense, it may be a little hard to read the Catechism. Another thing you could do, there's this great podcast called the Catechism in a Year podcast. My father, Mike Schmidt. So this podcast, Catechism in a Year, it goes through the whole catechism. It reads it to you in 365 episodes, and it explains it to you. Now, if you want to you don't want to do the whole thing, you can skip to chapter 270, episode 270. That's where they start with the Ten Commandments. If you want to start with the first commandment, have it be explained to you, go search Catechism in a Year podcast, go to episode 270, and pick up from there. And the next, 40 episodes are about the Ten Commandments. You can dive deep into understanding the Ten Commandments and knowing what it is that it entails to live the perfection of love.